Alright, so, the interesting thing about the two different, generations, I guess it would be, is, there's always, for every generation, there is going to be that movie that's that really, really dirty movie that you're not allowed to see. Probably for you, that movie was American Pie, and probably that movie for your parents was Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Porky's is up there, too.
Porky's was the year before Fast Times, but Porky's, I hate to break it to most people, Porky's is a piece of shit, in my opinion anyway. I never liked Porky's, and the sequel was even worse.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I didn't even see the third one, but these are the ones where there was a time with these two movies where they, obviously not one time because they're almost 20 years apart, but
I'm sure there's some theaters that have them back to back.
But there are movies that have the reputation that they have because not only do they have all the raunchy comedy that people who are too young to see it want so badly to see, but it also has something to say about the generation that is watching it. So we'll start with Fast Times, which is Amy Heckerling's movie from the script by Cameron Crowe, which is based on his book. And he's also one of the students that flunks Mr. Hand's class. And for here we have this whole array of characters that are just kind of intertwining through each other's lives. There's really no one particular story we follow, even if I guess Stacy is the closest we get to a kind of a central character. Even though Spicoli is clearly the poster child of the movie, he's clearly a supporting player. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize just how little Spicoli's actually in this movie because Sean Penn's performance had such an impact on everybody.
People have never seen the movie probably that way, too.
Yeah, because when you think of Fast Times, probably the first thing you think of is...
Jeff Spicoli. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, the main story is, I guess the central story, if there is one, is, the way Stacey is basically trying to... It starts off with her just trying to lose her virginity and get out there physically, but then as the movie progresses, she hopes to find love in a relationship. And a few different guys come in and out of her life throughout the movie. And cause problems. And then every character kind of branches off her, like, she's classmates with Spicoli, and there's a whole story with Brad, who is her brother, so pretty much all the characters kind of branch off from her. Phoebe Cates is her best friend. She has kind of a... Phoebe Cates is mostly there doing the best friend part, but she kind of has her own story going on, like, off-screen, with this boyfriend she keeps talking about that we never see.
His name was George Glass.
So, let's talk about these individual stories. Let's talk about Spicoli first, because he's clearly the, yeah, he's what everybody's mind goes to. From his lines, from his appearance, to his shoes, pretty much everything about him is iconic. The ordering of the pizza. And it's weird, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's so much... obviously, I wasn't alive in 1982, so I have no idea if this performance grabbed people immediately and was iconic. And it's just kind of a bonus that he grew into a two-time Oscar-winning actor that is seen as this really, you know, full of himself actor when he started with this. I think he had taps before this, and then not much else to my recollection. And he just embodied this ultimate surfer persona. And the terminology, like a lot of people have considered him to be Bill and Ted before Bill and Ted ever happened. They're like 7 years apart, if not more. And he is just everything this character needs to be. His best scenes come from his interactions with Mr. Hand. I love the moment where he arrives to class late. That whole scene. That gets blown out of proportion, where he just calls him a dick, but it gets blown out of proportion in true high school style. That apparently he had pulled a knife on him. And just the little lines that he's... Like, not even the stuff that he just really, really focuses on, but just those little small lines in there that he says when you can't even really see his face. Like, when he shows up to Mr. Hand's class and he's just kind of talking through the crack in the door and he's like, is this world history? And he's like, well, I don't know, is this? And he's like, well, yeah, this is world history. I can see the globe right there. And then he's standing there while Mr. Hand's looking over his schedule and he just looks out at the class and goes, huh, I know that, dude. And he's just this endlessly quotable, iconic character that anybody can recognize, even if you haven't, like... I was familiar with it immediately, because I talked about this in a couple of the videos when we talked about those movies, but, the VHS shelf that my parents had, that had, like, 4 movies on it that we were forbidden from, and it was, Rocky Horror, it was, Coppola's Dracula, and there was one other one, and there was this one. And obviously the VHS cover is just that picture of Sean Penn's face. And it just caused like this whole, you know, most movies that came out between this and American Pie, they came out that were like this, were just striving to be Fast Times.
Yeah.
And that's why, I don't know if, you know, because I saw this one so early or not, that when I saw Porky's afterwards, it was like, really? This piece of shit came first before this? It just didn't seem right. So, I think it's clear, you know, because it's kind of like a triple thing going on here, because Porky's is kind of here in spirit.
Kind of.
How you have, it's basically just known for its raunchiness, but Fast Times had a way of kind of reaching out to people and showing them things that they recognized, along with giving them the raunchy jokes.
Yeah.
And that's why it kind of, despite the fact that it came out a year later, it's the one that has a much more respected image, I guess you'd call it. Okay, I was on the cast and then I got sidetracked, sorry. Judge Reinhold is really fantastic in this. The way Brad goes from like job to job, and how he's also kind of, for a while there, he's just kind of the brother of Stacy, and he doesn't really have much other purpose. We just kind of watch as he fails at his jobs over and over again. The wonderfully memorable scene where he gets fired because the guy said, I wanted a 100% guarantee on my breakfast because it was undercooked. And it devolves into Brad having to tell him, Mister, if you don't shut up, I'm going to kick 100% of your ass. And I love using that line, even out of context. It's just a fun line to say when his friend Arnold is the one that's at the register, and he has to take a piss, so Brad comes out, and the incident follows where Brad gets fired, and the scene ends with him going back to the bathroom and just pounding on the door saying, "Hope you had a hell of a piss, Arnold." However, also another great thing about Brad is the fact that he has a really great kind of, I don't know if it's considered a dramatic moment, but the relationship between him and Stacy as the movie gets closer to the end brings a real humanity out of it, and makes it kind of rise above many things do, but this is one thing that really makes it rise above the, you know, raunchy teen comedy. Because there was the moment where, obviously she has the run-in with Damone and ends up needing an abortion. Because that was the thing in the 80s, I guess. Because you had, with like, you know, well, the late 70s and then early 80s. To late 80s, I guess. Where you had like these teen, you know, comedy or romance movies that somehow managed to throw abortion into the mix. Because you have this, you have Grease, and you have Dirty Dancing. They all managed to do it somehow. It was like a trend or something over that decade. And they just have that real moment where she tells Brad she's going bowling, but then he catches her going across the street to the abortion clinic, and they have that moment where he basically says, you know, like, who was it? But then he says, you don't have to tell me, I won't tell Mom, this'll just be our thing. And when she goes out with the older guy and he hides the flowers in the trunk for her, and it's a really... They don't make a big deal about it, but it's a really great brother-sister relationship that's really interesting to watch happen, because it's there and it really works and it's really effective, but they're so nonchalant about it, they just kind of put it in there. but I really love those scenes. Oh my god. Okay. Speaking of Damone. Well, here's the thing about this, is I have no idea whether or not I love this character or I despise him. Because we all know, I am positive, the great thing about the character of Damone is we all know him. We all know that worthless, sleazy sack of shit. And sometimes, they might just share a name with him. I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm just saying that. So, the thing about it is, it seems every sleazy douchebag you have ever met in your life is Damone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes that character so great. And the guy, I don't know what happened to the guy that played him, but he just does it so perfectly. Because it's like, I almost don't know if that guy is that much of a sleazy douchebag in real life, or if he's just that good of an actor, because Damone is the poster child for that sleazy piece of shit you know in real life. He exactly, just down to, like, every single scene that he's in, somebody has been through that with a Damone in their life.
Oh, yeah.
And you just hate him so fucking much. And that's why, in a sense, I love the character. Because how they were able to actually bring that to life. And it almost makes you wonder if every Damone you ever met is just trying to be Damone, and that's why they are the way they are. Like, he started the whole thing.
That's funny you mentioned that, and the fact we're doing this versus, he actually was in an American Pie straight-to-DVD movie in 2009.
Oh, man, why did he do that?
Last thing he did was Cougar Town last year.
And of course, you know, you have your 80s nostalgia stuff. Like, this, you have the great soundtrack, you have, there's the moment where, it really shows its 80s style, where, his dating advice to Rat is, do, side one of Zeppelin. On your drive to the restaurant.
Yes.
There's a little moment where I kind of like it. Like, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it's kind of like subtle symbolism. Where, Stacy is meeting up with the older guy, and she's going to lose her virginity to him. And we as an audience know it's going to be a guy that just uses her for sex and then throws her away. But the thing about it is, while she's standing on the sidewalk in the middle of the night waiting for him, there's graffiti on the wall behind her for wasted youth. And it's almost like a double meaning. I thought that was kind of clever if it was on purpose, which I would think it would have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, now, another, oh, and of course, you know, play, obviously there were 3 future Best Actor winners here. We have, Sean Penn, obviously, and then, Nicolas Cage, when he was still under Coppola, is Judge Reinhold's friend that works at the burger place, and you can also catch him at the football game. And of course, the big jock with the really awesome car that is the star football player is Forrest Whitaker, which is interesting to look back on. And of course, you know, we have Spicoli's stoner buddies are Eric Stoltz and Anthony Edwards before anybody knew them. So, yes, the point here is it's got this reputation for being absolutely hilarious, and it is from beginning to end. Like, even in the most dramatic of places, they find something funny, whether it be broadly funny or awkwardly funny or subtly funny. They find some way to make it work as a comedy, even when they're in the most serious of circumstances. Ray Walston is genius as Mr. Hand. I really love the scene at the end where he actually goes to Spicoli's house, and they have to kind of have that little study group before Spicoli can leave and go to the dance. Vincent Schiavelli is great as the one of the teachers as well, the anatomy professor. But no, the great thing about this movie is it can be the big, broad, you know, raunchy sex comedy, but at the same time, it just captures, you know, that age so well, and not only, you know, despite, you know, the fast times of the title, also, you know, the really, really troubling times, but it manages to do it all in this despite the fact that it's a comedy, you feel like once it's over that you've been on a ride. And I find that really interesting, because not many movies have ever pulled that off, especially, you know, sex comedies. This is like the one movie to really be able to pull that off. And it helps that, how, despite what American Graffiti did with this setup, it's nice when everybody gets a happy ending. When it comes up and says what happened to everybody. And the only person that does not get a happy ending, of course, is Damone, who we learn got busted for trying to scalp Aussie tickets and ended up working at 7-Eleven.
This serves him right.
Yes. So, yes, the movie's got a reputation for a reason, and it absolutely earns it, and it's one of the great comedy classics. Now with American Pie, this was the one that I grew up with, obviously.
Yep.
I was, I guess 8 when it came out. 9, get in that area. And everybody was talking about it. It was huge.
In more ways than one.
Yes. And all it centered on were these 4 guys who were getting ready to graduate from high school and go to prom, and they make a pact that they're all going to get laid. Which has sleazy and immoral written all over it on paper. But the way they managed to sculpt these 4 characters and the characters they, you know, come into contact with, and more with one, but is what really makes it work. Obviously, Jim is the relatable loser character. The very first thing we see is, this is like when we had the 80s nostalgia with Fast Times with, you know, Zeppelin and, you know, the Wasted Youth Graffiti and all that. We have Jim trying to watch the dirty channels through the...
Well, that's how you did it back in the day, honestly.
That is 90s nostalgia at its finest.
Exactly.
And I love that they just play up his desperation so much when he's talking to Oz at school the next day, and he's like, hey man, The Little Mermaid was on last night. Ariel's so hot. And Oz just kind of gives him the, dude, look. But Jim is just that desperate for this. And of course, you know, people say what they do now about where his career has taken him. He was on Orange is the New Black, so there's that. But obviously Jason Biggs was the perfect choice for this at the time. All of them were.
Yeah.
I think the only person people knew ahead of time was Thomas Ian Nicholas, simply because of Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
Wow, I don't like watching Henry Rowan-Gardner try to get laid. This is making me nervous. But of course, the real breakout star of this movie, despite the fact that our main 4 are the heart of the movie, is Sean William Scott. Was Stifler probably the most quoted character of like the late 90s after this movie came out?
Especially in my group of friends, yeah.
There were a lot of big quoted movies in 1999, and this was definitely one of them.
This was the one right here.
Especially if you wanted to like impress your friends by saying dirty words in school, you would quote Stifler.
Yep.
I believe his very first line of the movie is calling Oz a fuckface. And it does kind of suck because the character was so popular and the character worked so well. Sean William Scott really started to get typecast, and as the movies progressed, he still stayed funny, but as the movies progressed, and this isn't, you know, Scott's fault by any means, it was the writing, of course, but as the movies started to progress, Stifler kind of started to get more and more of a parody of himself than when he was here and the second one, but it's still, the character always worked. And then you have the love interest characters that kind of depended. Like, Allison Hannigan was obviously the breakout of the 4 love interest characters.
Completely.
Tara Reid was there as just kind of the attractive girl. Mina Suvari, in an interesting twist of fate, I mentioned this in the other review, and I'll mention it again here. Mina Suvari was in 2 different movies in the same year with American in the title, and she played 2 characters that are the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Because in American Beauty, she's the sought-after cheerleader that everybody wants, that works as a model. Yet somehow in American Pie, she's the dorky band geek that nobody wants and makes fun of. And she does kind of have, you know, there is kind of a thing regarding her storyline, because I kind of feel like it's the most forced of them. Because there is an even flow going back and forth between Jim trying to get with Nadia and Kevin trying to get, laid, and then Finch trying to build up his fake reputation through Natasha Lyonne, of course, who's also fantastic here. The story with Angela, I think her name is. Yeah, she's the one I'm trying to... And I believe that's her name. No, Angela was her name in American Beauty. So Heather. See, that's how much I fuck it up. Okay. I remember her name because I had to. It was when you just saw me remember her name. It was just the image of Chris Klein in my head saying, Heather. The only problem is her story kind of feels forced because everybody has their own kind of conflict going on, but with their story, it's kind of like Oz has to make the decision to go into the choir, and then once he does, he meets her, and then, she asks him out to the prom, and everything's great. And then from a distance, she sees Stifler making fun of her, and Oz just is taking it, and then just kind of nonchalantly high-fives Stifler just to kind of not, make a big fuss out of it. But they make this a whole conflict because Heather takes that as Oz was making fun of her. I thought that was a little bit of a forced conflict overall, but still, all the characters, work fine. There is the nice moment where he decides to leave the lacrosse game to go get her, and even though it is kind of a cheesy moment, they still make it funny via Stifler, where he. I love the moment where Oz says, yeah, I have somewhere better to be, and takes off, and just. Really legitimately sad, Stifler just looks in the distance and goes, Oz? Fuckface? And then we have the whole scene of him running across the sidewalk, and then all the way to the other building, and then going inside, and making it to the thing just in time, to the concert just in time, and then they make up. And then after all this has happened, we cut back to Stifler, and he just is still defeated and just says, I don't think he's coming back. I've always loved how they added that in, along with the cheesy romance of it all. Okay, the time has come. Let's talk about Jim's death.
Yes.
This movie has so many breakout characters in it. Eugene Levy, of course, is a comedic genius to begin with.
Indeed.
And this kind of showed a younger generation, Eugene Levy. Once again, just playing that ultimate awkward dad with the whole, he's the one that walks. I love how he reacts to the porn with, he hears spank my hairy ass, and his response is, what's that? The moment where he's just kind of standing, he walks into Jim's room and has a grocery bag filled with explicit pornographic magazines, and his response is, oh hey Jim, I was just walking by. And of course, one of my favorite lines in the movie. Jim opens his bedroom door. His dad's just standing there in the hallway, just looking at a picture. Oh, hey, I was just, admiring this day. That was fun, wasn't it? Jim, I want to talk about masturbation. And it's just delivered flawlessly. And he's just so straight-faced about it. Like, there is no underlying... And Biggs really delivers here, too. Because there's no, underlying, giggling behind the camera thing. This is played totally straight. Which just adds to it perfectly. And it's just it's just filled with all these, things that really, really broke out. The term MILF, for instance.
Yeah, no lie.
Is, common nowadays. But where's the first place everybody heard it? That's right, John Cho. That's what you will always be famous for. You have Harold and you have Sulu, but you will always be known as MILF Guy Number 2.
Which came full circle in the final movie, so.
Yeah, that was great.
I love that.
And I love that it's just this, it's like a really, really dirty John Hughes movie.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Complete with the fact that Don't You Forget It Only Plays at the Prom, of course. Now, when we come to this ending, what I thought was really great about it was how they actually handled it. They split up how they were going to handle it. Because, oddly enough, despite the fact that Jason Biggs fucks up high in this movie, and despite the fact that we have the genius scene of build-up, where Kevin has to dispose of himself in a cup of beer that happens to be standing by. That Stifler keeps, maybe he'll drink it, maybe he won't. Despite all of that, despite the fact that we have the Finch shitting scene, despite all of this, the movie handles its content maturely.
Yeah.
In the long run. And they actually split up, whether or not to play it serious or whether or not to play it for laughs. Because when Kevin and Oz finally lose their virginity, it's played really realistically and really, romantically. And they just really, really... Yeah, it's awkward to watch because it's just so right there. But then you have the other two, with Jim and Finch, where it's played for comedy. And it's just this perfect balance. And I thought that was a really clever way to go about it. And despite of all that, how... you see comedies like this nowadays, especially the really shitty comedies that are straight to video that have this movie's name plastered on it, just sell.
That Eugene Levy is still a part of.
Yeah. Where you have it just seems really mean-spirited. There's a whole bunch of really offensive jokes in it, and they're just trying to go for broke, and they don't give a fuck, and they just don't care. Despite all the dirty things in this movie, it's also really good-natured.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing mean-spirited about this movie.
No.
And I thought, like, the most we get to a character having to get comeuppance is Sherman, and that's just because he lied about that girl and ends up pissing himself in front of everybody. That's as bad as it gets. So yeah. I know it's kind of the poster child for movies that kind of set in this craze from the late 90s forward about how raunchy comedies can sell.
Super bad work, though.
Yeah, if they go as dirty as they can.
Mm-hmm.
But but it does not get enough credit for how maturely it handles the really when it goes for that, when it actually tries for that. So when it's trying to really, handle the subject matter in a legitimate way, they find a way to make it work. And when they want to go for broad gross-out comedy, they find a way to make that work. And not just in a cheap way. Like I said, the way the Stifler scene builds as to he keeps almost drinking the beer and then doesn't, is just a really great way to do that kind of thing. So as far as choosing between the two, obviously I have a soft spot for American Pie because it was the one for me of the two. But I think Fast Times might pull it off just a little better in regards to just kind of the overall
total package.
Yeah. But it's close. It's really close. But yeah, I think Fast Times probably did this better than any movie's going to. So.
And nothing will ever come close to it, especially this day and age.
Well, this came close, obviously, but as we talk about, but yeah.
There's been rumors for a while for them to do another American Pie set out in Las Vegas, and I've heard this was started in 2012. I believe was the last time I heard this was actually going to happen.
I won't jump to conclusions because I thought Reunion actually worked.
Reunion did work very well
for the most part, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So.
But Reunion seemed like a great ending too. So
yeah, Reunion was the perfect ending.
Why don't they just, yeah. So yes, that's what we have here.
Yeah, so another battle is in the books here for Versus. Sorry about the coughing on camera. I kind of got choked up. Not sad or anything. Well, yeah, but that's another story. I was coughing. Next week, brand new Versus. Don't know what it's going to be yet. Not sure. Tomorrow we have a special treat for you guys. Me, AJ, and Ashley did a hour and 20-minute video talking.
Supposed to be that long.
Yeah, I know, but it was fun though. Talking about the Academy Awards and the Oscar ceremony, so that's coming at you guys tomorrow. Tuesday, NXT and Impact Wrestling. Wednesday, the Vlog of Randomness talks about Universal Orlando and the newest ticket price increase. Thursday, brand new Sip and Snack will be focusing on drinks this time around. Next Friday, AJ's movie reviews will be Chappie, Unfinished Business, and possibly the second best exotic Marigold Hotel, and I believe Black Sea is on that list as well, possibly.
Probably.
And, of course, that'll kick you into Gaming with Ash on Saturday, and that Versus I just mentioned on Sunday. So that is your week for Pop. And, AJ, any parting words?